Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
All right.
Good morning and good night and good evening and good days.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself, and I'll orient everyone to what we're doing and then introduce our fantastic speakers. Hopefully, you're in the right place. This is the International Competency-Based Health Professions Educators Collaborative webinar, or if that's too much of a mouthful, ICBE Collaborative webinar. If you've seen these webinars or read papers from this collaborative before, it was previously called the ICBME collaborators, but we wanted to recognize the amazing competency-based education efforts in other health professions. So the name was changed to recognize the rich experiences from fields outside of medicine, and now it's the International Competency-Based Health Professions Educators Collaborative. This year, our webinar team reached out to educators from across the globe to find out what should be the through line for our webinar series. And what we heard is that many people want stories on CBE implementation, the lessons they've learned, and the strategies for managing those challenges that came up with change and with innovation. So tonight, we're kicking off with two fantastic speakers who have deep expertise in competency-based education and lots of rich experiences with real-world implementation efforts. The title of our conversation is From Vision to Reality, Effective Change Management in Global CBE Implementation. Now, I've asked our speakers to give us a brief primer on change management and followed by some Q&A with their own real-world experiences. Let me go ahead and introduce our experts who will be speaking with us tonight. First is Dr. Dana Sall. She's the program director for Honor Health Internal Medicine Residency Program in Scottsdale, Arizona in the United States. She's an assistant professor at the University of Arizona College of Medicine in Phoenix. And in addition to her medical degree, she holds a master's degree in education. She has over 10 years of experience in both undergraduate and postgraduate medical education, and her areas of interest include competency-based education, assessment, feedback, simulation, and adult learning theory. Our second speaker is Dr. Fremen Chou. He's an emergency physician and an assistant professor in the School of Medicine at China Medical University in Taiwan, and director of the Center of Faculty Development at its affiliated hospital. He has a PhD in e-learning and science education, and brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise in the field of medical education as a senior clinician educator in Taiwan. Additionally, Dr. Chou serves as the Deputy Secretary General in the Taiwan Association of Medical Education. His areas of interest include e-learning, interprofessional education, and competency-based education. Dr. Sall, Dr. Chou, thank you so much for being here on this webinar.
Thanks for having us, Ben. And please call me Dana for the group.
Yes, it's so happy to see everyone.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we're going to lead off with that primer that I mentioned. Dana, do you want to go ahead and lead us?
Yes. Are you seeing a screen or no?
We are, but
Yes.
it's not in presenter mode.
One second.
Can you flip your, there we go. Got it.
All right. See, we did a trial run and then that messed me up. So maybe I need change management on myself for how to effectively share a screen. Welcome everybody and thanks for joining us today. I was tasked with talking about a change management framework in about 10 minutes, which, could easily be a session of itself. So I'll try to give just a high level overview. And of course, if there's questions, we can discuss it as the webinar proceeds. But what we'll briefly talk about is one change management framework, which is Kotter's 8 steps for leading change. And then we'll talk about how to apply that to CBE and maybe anticipate some barriers to implementation. So I want to just try maybe typing in the chat Why is change hard? Why is it so hard for us to do this? Yes, I'm seeing change is loss, fear of the unknown, hard to break habits. Absolutely, loss of power. I love that. Keep typing. I'm going to move us, but you're speaking to the diversity of why change is so hard. Change takes a lot of effort. And because of that, it takes time. And so often people lose momentum as they're waiting and waiting for an outcome that is hard to achieve. As you've mentioned in the chat, people are reluctant to change their habits. We can become very stuck in our ways. If it was up to me, I'd still be talking on this type of a phone instead of my smartphone. And I think Ben knows that from traveling with me. But we can be stuck in our ways and it's hard to change. In fact, because we're so stuck in our ways, oftentimes it really requires a change in culture for us to be able to move change initiatives forward. And competing commitments may unintentionally derail our efforts, meaning maybe unanticipated consequences of what will happen if we change may kind of inadvertently make us reluctant to take those necessary steps. So we're going to talk about one framework for change. There are many, but this is one I think is maybe the most popular. So we'll go through some of the steps here. What's important to know is that at times, some of these steps can happen concurrently. Sometimes you need to, it's kind of shown as a circle, but sometimes you may need to go back and revisit a step. But change initiatives tend to fail if we skip some of these key steps. So let's go through them. The first one is establishing a sense of urgency. So as we talked about being stuck in our ways, if people don't believe that there's an urgent need for change, they won't be motivated to change. So we need to have that reason or that why. And if you don't have one tip is to create one. So create a crisis. An example of this, perhaps in the business world, would be if a president of an organization knows that customer satisfaction is terrible, but they don't have any data to actually create a survey to show everybody how poorly they're doing. That's usually a good vehicle to light a fire under company members. In CBE, what might that look like? Well, one idea would be to ask questions of your end users that stimulate cognitive dissonance. So perhaps for your faculty, you might ask, how do you know that we're graduating competent physicians? Or this one that I think really hits home for my clinical competency committee, which is, have you ever graduated a trainee that you would not want to care for your family? And in what ways does our program allow this to happen? People recognizing what your current system is doing and how it might allow these things can really help them understand, something has to change here. You can ask similar questions to the learners about how they perceive the assessment and feedback that they receive. This might also look like sharing anecdotes. I think, maybe a good example of this is somebody who says, oh, the EKG was normal. And then you go and you read the EKG with them and they don't even know where to start. So they've been telling you it's normal for so long, and then you uncover that they don't really know. And again, sharing data, even if it's painful. So that might look like board pass rates, patient comments, peer comments. Even if it looks like it might uncover something about your program, your institution, or your system, that can be a big catalyst for change. So the next step is to create a guiding coalition. And when I think about the next couple steps, I think about this quote from Jim Collins from his book, Good to Great. And he says, it's better to first get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats, and then figure out where to drive. And for me, that's your guiding coalition. So this is you assembling a group with a shared commitment who just got fired up about the crisis that you've laid out for them. This usually involves key stakeholders across discipline and forms your core team. And on that team, you definitely want some people who are disruptive thinkers, who can see this crisis and think about how to change things in new ways. With respect to CBE, what does your guiding coalition look like? Well, it really depends on where you are in your journey and what your specific role is. For countries that already have a CBE-focused governance, for example, in the US, the ACGME has created a set of milestones and a very competency-based focused, then really local implementation is key versus a country who's just starting out on this work. Locally, your coalition might look like faculty, residents or fellows, members of your clinical competency committee, allied health professionals, patients, anybody who you think could help drive this work. Step 3 is to develop a vision and strategy. So now you have the right people on the bus, you have your core team. Now we have to figure out where they're going. The problem that you're solving is clear, that's your crisis. But now you need a vision to kind of drive the work of this coalition. In CBE, what this might look like is actually developing a mission and vision statement. So maybe our mission in CBE is to train high-quality physicians or allied health professionals that provide safe and equitable care. And the vision, this is what your group will accomplish, might look like trainees will receive multiple low-stakes, competency-based assessments by multi-source assessors to ensure that we're making good decisions when we're discussing promotion or remediation, and that also provide meaningful feedback to the trainee. Step 4 is communicating that vision. So it's one thing if the core team knows it, but if the rest of your key stakeholders do not, it almost will always fail. So using every vehicle possible, that's emails, discussing at meetings, social media when appropriate, really kind of communicating what it is you're trying to do. And your guiding coalition are really champions of that vision, both communicating it, but then also leading by example. They have to be into it too. And I think one small way in which I do this in my own environment is I end a lot of emails, especially when I'm trying to communicate something that relates to what we're doing here by, usually it's an ask. So it might be an ask for me about a particular learning activity or completing an evaluation. And at the end, I say, thank you for all you do to help our learners, trying to orient them that what we're really here for is helping learners develop into competent physicians. Step 5 is to empower other people to act on the vision. So this usually looks like getting rid of obstacles that prevent change. As you can imagine, that really often requires big system or structural change. And because of that, you really need to encourage your coalition and stakeholders to take some risks, try things that might fail, and in doing so, really kind of think out of the box. In CBE, what that might look like, again, for a system where we're more in the implementation phase, is to engage frontline assessors to maybe, think about what do they want to assess in their local environments as it relates to competency. It also might look like doing a lot of faculty and trainee development on what direct observation looks like, what the purpose is, how to do it well, what CBE is in general and why it's so important. Discussing, narrative versus numeric assessment, formative versus summative, and kind of giving everybody the skills to be able to do this. Not having skills would be a barrier to implementation. Also brainstorming ways to kind of streamline all this data that you're collecting and make it easy for everybody to do would help them act. Step 6 is generating short-term wins. So really what this involves is, as you're doing this big change in initiative and efforts that can take years, you want to be able to sustain momentum. And part of that is to be able to plan along the way for little wins that you can make visible. And once you do that, you broadcast to everybody and maybe recognize or reward people who are really doing this well or who helped you make this happen. In CBE, what could this look like? So early on, as you're starting implementation, maybe it's just recognizing different departments or faculty members for doing these CBE types of assessments. Later on, that could involve storytelling from your clinical competency committee. So maybe all the data that you've collected really helped you make a decision about a learner, and being able to feed that back to, faculty or peer assessors. Sharing rich narrative data. I do this a lot in our faculty meetings. So if somebody's written a particularly helpful comment about a learner, I remove their names, but it's something that I share both as a faculty development tool on how to do this, but then to, recognize somebody who's really done, this incredible job. And of course, later on, studying the outcomes and then sharing, why this can be successful. Step 7 is kind of consolidating those gains or those short-term wins and sustaining acceleration for your change initiative. So again, you're kind of using the wins and the credibility of what you've done already to change remaining systems or structures that might not align with your vision. In doing so, you always reevaluate persistent barriers and act to help remove those. And also, you are now trying to expand your coalition. So that might look like hiring or developing people who can help you implement the vision on a bigger scale. In CBE, what could this look like? If you start small in one department or one institution, perhaps spreading, to a different institution or different specialty. You could bring in external experts to kind of help promote your vision and work. By bringing in others who've done this work and who are experts in the field, you can kind of disrupt some of that normalized deviance of those naysayers or traditionalists who are stuck in the old ways if they can see that it's not just what you're saying, this is something that's accepted elsewhere. But it's also important to know that at a stage like this, you can't ignore the people who are against you. You kind of have to hear and listen and adapt your program of assessment accordingly. There's a lot of ways to do this. One is polarity thinking, which we can talk about if we have time afterwards, but this is a way to kind of take a both and approach. So how can we both move CBE forward and also not lose what people find important about, our traditional methods of assessment? And finally, step 8 is anchoring these new approaches in culture. As I mentioned, this takes years. At this point, the naysayers are either on board enough with your vision so that they're not going to stall it, or there's been enough turnover that you kind of also selected for people who share this vision. And really the mantra at this stage is for faculty, residents, students, peers, patients, everybody to understand that's just how we do things here. It's part of our culture. And so with that, I will pause and hand it over to Fremen.
Thanks, Dana. That's fantastic. What a great start. And I'll just quickly editorialize. We've used Cotter's approach a lot in my institution and have found it to be super, super helpful. And I think Fremen's going to springboard off that and tell us a little bit more about change management and how Cotter fits into a broader scheme of that whole idea of change management.
Many thanks to Dana. Dana's talk built up a strong ground for me to extend the idea or the some key concepts relevant to change management in the transition to competence-based education. Dear colleagues and friends devoted in competence-based education, do you really have similar experience or thoughts as Dana mentioned that change is really so hard? I'm so happy to have this opportunity to share my experience in Taiwan and the knowledge based on our recent coming soon published book chapter, Managing Curriculum Reform in the Transition to CBE Using EPS. In the book, Entrustable Professional Activity and the Entrustment Decision Making in Health Profession Education. We believe this book will come in soon in the before the end of October. The transition or implementation of an CBE program represents an educational paradigm shift and it can be clearly categorized as major curricular reform. The reform of this scope extend beyond just learning objectives, curriculum content, or some new teaching method assessment tools. It also involves the support areas such as governance structure and even administration, facilities, and teacher training, evaluation, and program improvement. So it's the change is big, and the curriculum score and even culture of education need to be changed. The transition to a CBE program necessitates a major curriculum reform. It can be considered as a system overhaul. This process involves planning, implementing, and monitoring change while preparing and supporting stakeholders to embrace and sustain the change. We can see here is two domains of change. One is project management. The other is change management. Usually, we take change management as a big term. And actually, if we want to have things implement in the real world, not only need the framework talk about change management in the human aspect, but also need the technical aspect from project management. You can see many models and the framework in this PowerPoint. In the right side, Dana just described one of the famous change management framework, Carter's 8 steps. And we also have the others, such as Rogers' diffusion and the innovation theory, Lewin's 3-stage freeze, defreeze, and freeze, ARCAR model. And all these models share similar strategy and the task, that is to help people adopt and implement the change, including make the need for change tangible, analyze readiness for change, and engage stakeholders relevant, provide opportunity for co-creation and co-production, and support buy-in among all the stakeholders, facilitate local adoption of the change, and also have the idea of localization. You need to contextualize the change. For example, even your institution have a major implementation of CBE. Your own program is have a different or a specific context, different than other departments in the institution. So the idea of globalization, not only in the national, international level, but also in the program level inside an institution. And communication with involve upward and downward. The buy-in from the top, the leaders is quite critical, and the buy-in from the front line is as critical as the leaders, and provide training and support to all those stakeholders, evaluate early about what happened for the change, and refine them iteratively. That is key to sustain the change. On the other way, you can see the left side, project management also have several models and framework. Everyone know PDSA, and that is plan, do, study, act cycle, and the SWOT analysis, agile management framework. I will not go to this detail, but also among these models, project management share similar strategies. That is, define the scope and the goal, establish the structure for governance, analyze and allocate resources, including time. We should take time as resources. For example, if you don't have so much material resources, you can spend more time to achieve a similar vision. And pilot really matters for success, and we can sequence our implementation through iterative pilot and monitor our performance, including quality control. All these issues can also make the things happen in the real world. So it's a little bit different between project and change management, but they together help us to realize the change. And there are 5 essential things when we read through a lot of literature among framework for change management and project management. We find 5 major things evolve. The first is communication. Communication builds the ground for the success of change management. They build understanding, consensus, and the ownership of the change among trainees, faculty, governance, structure leaders, and all the stakeholders. The second, the change need iterative design. We will never have a perfect change or a perfect tool or a perfect curriculum in the first place. We should try to introduce change effectively through pilots, and with the iterative design, we can keep improve and control the scope of change to make it affordable, not really threatening to the program. And the leadership is the key. We need to navigate the power dynamic and the politics essential for change implementation and the sustainability. Teamwork. No one can do the change management by one person or just one leader. We should leverage the often limited available time and the resources for maximum impact by engaging champions. We should identify the champions through the process from various stakeholders and forming a functional project management team. Evaluation and refinement. We need to continuously assess and adapt curriculum elements to sustain the change, ensure the change align with the element and our background theory underpinning philosophy we want to change. The change management generally proceeds through three sequential or interrelated phases. They are initiation, implementation, and sustainability. And these 3 stages I built up on Dana's talk. We take the Carter's 8 step as example. For the first stage, initiation phase, we create the climate for change. And we can use several guiding questions for us to figure out whether we take advantage from the change model. For example, the Carter's model, the first step is create a sense of urgency. We can ask ourselves, what's the problem with current practice? What is the burning platform? And what can we reduce the friction? to help people want to change. And for the second part, form a powerful coalition. We can ask who can contribute to the curriculum development. We'll layer a working group. And for the third one, develop a strategical vision. We can ask, where do we want to go from here? Is there what change are needed? Assessment, learning activity, or philosophy, physical space, facilities. Sorry. And I will not go through every detailed question. You can look the slide and find out when we try to apply a change management model, we can use several guiding questions to make sure we take the advantage from the framework and make sure we have the corresponding actions to help the change management proceed smoothly. We summarize 11 components to curriculum change management for us to pay attention to. For elaborating on the previous quarter's model and based on the experience of the of our authors and literature, we suggest these 11 key components. For the first one, in the initiation phase, communicating the sense of urgency and building in the same time, building the project team and the vision. Two important goals in the initiation phase include reaching an agreement on the blueprint for the new competence-based education, the vision, and establishing a project management team. Another key is the active and visible support of faculty leaders, either as they can play the role as change leaders in managing or directing the change, or they can play the role as sponsors by providing support, resource, and advocacy. So the first stage, communication, play the key role. Before we do that, we can have the communication and set up the team and have a shared mental model on the vision. For the second phase, implementation phase, there are several tips. I just go through some key points. Setting up a standing planning process. The overall change management to help people buy in. For example, Carter's A step. But in this change management, they will produce or create a short-term goal, very specific or concrete task. For example, implementation of CCC, adopt a new curriculum model, for example, EBA, or even smaller, adopt a new assessment tool, workplace assessment application. We should have the project manager team to guarantee the process goes smoothly and have the resource needed and have the training needed to help people. And through this process, piloting and implementing sequentially is key point. Just remember, we can control the damage, not the damage. We should control the scope and not treating everyone. For example, we can say, oh, yes, we will try to adopt EPA, but we pilot one EPA. Or for example, through all the rotation, we just choose the ICU rotation to implement what kind of assessment that will help you to allocate your resource and the time to really get showing and help people to get familiar with the change and providing space for discussion. So it's really important, listening, and listening. Then you communicate through that will provide a space for discussion and engaging people and bring the transparency in the change management process. And never forget the one key person, key stakeholder, that is trainees. In the process, try to involving trainee as many level as you can. They have the expertise about their own learning, and they make the key influence on the success of competence-based education. And we need to create opportunity for co-design and empowerment with the trainee and also with the clinical teachers, because the teaching and the learning happened between clinical teacher and the trainees. And the last two is anticipate resistance. Nothing will go without resistance. And however, we can celebrate success as soon as possible. So it's important to have several small projects in the same time, and your project team help to celebrate their successful soon. The last phase is sustainability phase. The program need the quality improve, continuous quality improvement, and keep that as the daily life. Then we will make a success change in culture. I will go quickly. I spend too much time, and we can set the very famous Van Valley's co-component framework, originally proposed as 5 co-components to evaluating implementation of CBE. And in Taiwan, we find that if matching with the target audience or key stakeholders in group, macro layer, meso layer, and the micro layer, that is society association or even the Ministry of Health, that is macro layer. And for meso, that is institutional or program level. For micro, that is a clinical teacher and the trainee or CCC member mentors in the frontline program. The 5 core components can be grouping in 3 dimensions. The first dimension is how you describe your profession by competence framework and the sequencing competence. And the second dimension is what had happened in education, that is experience and the teaching tailored to competencies. And the last part is programmatic assessment. How do you collect several low-stake data points through the process of teaching and learning and contribute to the decision and facilitate the coach for people to improve by the programmatic assessment. So there is hypothesis intensity of effort to do change management in the 3 dimension metrics with the 3 layer of stakeholders. This provide a framework for people to consider. The last 2 slides, I just provide example in Taiwan Society of Emergency Medicine in 2012, we create a vision for change in our Committee of Education. We set out a 5 years change management framework. And you can see the time point that eventually the 5 year become 8 years. We almost finished the first version of vision in 2020. And after that, we have an iterative consensus meeting to set up the new vision. We find out we need to develop underdeveloped professional content tailored to our competence-based model, Taiwan EM model. And we need to transform the culture and behavior of teaching and learning, because the traditional culture is not compatible with the philosophy of competence-based education. And we need to develop the whole new system to support the culture and new content. The last few reminders: change management introduced in linear fashion for ease of understanding, but may unfold in parallel or iterative following order that suits for your specific situation. And the localization, please always remember, think globally, but act locally. Your situation contextualization matters. And manage time as resource, not a proxy for goal setting. We don't say next year we will become competence-based education. We should elaborate a concrete vision. For example, introduce CCC into our program is our current goal. And based on how many resources and how many time we can achieve the goal. And the last one is always see both the forest and the tree, and start with the end in mind. Keep the overall vision and philosophy of the competence-based education, and then when you did even a small part of change, for example, just introduce a new tool. Thank you so much. I just spent too much time. And these are my major reference, and we will share our coming soon book. And I leave with the share screen.
Fantastic. Thank you, Fremen. It makes me think about how helpful it can be when you start a change initiative and it can really feel like you're just a little bit lost. But I feel like some of the frameworks and integration that both you and Dana presented tonight can give people like a path forward, even though it's not a linear, definitive path. If it's okay, I'd like to just ask a few questions of both of you to round out our time together. And one of them is going to start with something that really jumped out to me in the chat. And that is that when Dana asked how do people feel about change, what makes it difficult, there was a lot about uncertainty and not knowing what's next. And I just wondered, I know there's been a lot written lately about clinicians managing uncertainty. Most of what I've read is in medicine, but I'm sure that's true in all of the health professions. And how hard that can be for people, how that can really wear on our well-being, cause burnout. And I wonder if that's part of the reason why, do you see any overlap in learning how to manage uncertainty clinically and then learning how to manage uncertainty in change management? And how explicitly do you call that out whenever you're working in your teams? How explicitly do you say, I know there's uncertainty that is maybe contributing to what makes this difficult, or do you just kind of leave it unspoken?
I think, we talked briefly about PDSA cycles, and I think you just have to think about a big change initiative and the steps along the way, like small PDSA cycles, and have this lens of, I know this is not going to work, but we're going to try it. And that has to be part of the, kind of philosophy of your guiding coalition, that certain things are going to fail and you'll iterate from there. But yeah, I do think calling it out is important so people don't get discouraged.
And I want to add one thing. People, in our blood as a physician, we know the truth. The truth is that change is the nature in medicine. We are evolving, science are evolving, and we always adapt to new diagnosis, new knowledge, new tools. And should we just take analogy, education to healthcare, and diagnosis, the definition of health is just the definition of competent. And education is also have the nature change inside that. And especially in the AI generation is coming, I really believe the change will even out of our imagination.
I love that. Thank you for that insight, Fremen. Because one of the questions I have is, how have you best seen technology help change management initiatives, whether it's project management, communication? Fremen, you mentioned AI, and who knows? I heard a quote today that I think is a well-worn quote, but I really loved it, which is that AI will not beat humans, but humans who use AI will beat humans who don't use AI. And so how have you seen it used well, and what do you think is around the corner?
Well, I don't know about AI yet. I don't know if we're there quite yet, although I can foresee it being helpful with assessment. I think from my perspective, leveraging different modes of technology to help mass and leverage data has been really helpful. And a specific example would be, we have a learning management software where most of our evaluations go for our residents. But we were finding a lot of barriers in terms of getting workplace-based assessments and narrative feedback from allied health professionals, or maybe a faculty member at an offsite rotation who didn't have access to the software and found it cumbersome. So we've been able to generate, smaller, there's things like SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, things like that. So I think for me, it's more of a multimodal approach to collecting data that has been very helpful. What I would like to see are more, direct observation apps and ways that you can collect the data in real time as you're observing an encounter. And perhaps that's where AI would be really interesting in terms of synthesizing what it hears of a resident encounter. But I think maybe more to come on that.
I think technology, I would answer this in two tips. The first one is we always familiar with the traditional technology. We know if without IT support, a lot of CBME idea could not be realized. For example, programmatic assessment. And also in the project management, some in my institution, we use e-learning platform and the project management platform to sequential the task and the time frame, and share the documentation and the progress. And I would also like to mention AI. For example, not everyone here born to be change management expert. But when we think about one idea, we can invite AI to play some role. Sometimes play the role as your team to provoke some new idea for implementation. And in the other way, you can also have idea, but ask AI to play as the role of reviewer to critique your plan, and give you some suggestion. I believe that will be really useful.
Fantastic. We just had a really great question in the chat, if that's okay. Andrew Ong asked, what kind of broad faculty development strategies do you find useful in your own implementation, especially when you're scaling things on a national level? Workshops and resources, though important, don't seem to be adequate. So beyond just giving people resources and workshops, how do you do that faculty development?
I can try first. In Taiwan Society of Emergency Medicine, since 2012, we have the big vision, 5 years vision. Then we built up a task force, a committee. That committee is big size, 33 members, included almost 80% program directors from all the program of emergency medicine in whole the nation in Taiwan. We have meeting 2 hours every 2 months. And this meeting always have 1 hour preset updated news, or through the working project. We bring expert or not formal faculty development. Even the discussion themselves is a way of faculty development. People really be empowered to speak and influence the decision for the future. It's not only the faculty development to make share mental model, but also create change management to share the ownership of the change. That really get helpful to get buy-in.
Yeah, I think maybe I can just add, I think on scaling on the national level, I think looking to different governing bodies, resources, and again, it depends where you are in your journey. In the US, the ACGME has a lot of helpful resources on how to do this, you know, from the view of the clinical competency committee to the view of the frontline assessor, specifically some guidebooks on implementation. So I think looking at some of those resources and leveraging them can be helpful. On the you know, local scale, I think, as Freeman mentions, you know, time is such a big barrier to getting everybody who is involved in education, you know, on board and with the competence to be able to do this. And so one strategy that I've used more is kind of these little snippets at faculty development sessions. So I might talk about, you know, things that I've done are, you know, 3 minutes on multiple low stakes assessments so that they understand when they're completing one, the weight that it carries, and you know, empowers them to be honest about what they see. And then in a totally different session, I'll talk about narrative feedback. So we're meeting about something else, but I'm going to give them a little faculty development snippet, often guided by, you know, areas that I'm noticing that we need improvement on. So that's, I think, maybe what to do it mindfully with time.
Quick to add one thing, you also use another strategy that is to do the co-faculty development course. And this title make them feel they are co-faculty, and we pay money for them to create, to disseminate new faculty development on their own program, or to so they have the purpose and have the title and have the support to teach is non-choice. So that way is another way to run the in-depth faculty development.
Amazing. This is amazing. I actually have several other questions, but I know we're coming up on time, and I want to be respectful of our speakers' time as well as our viewers. So I'm going to end with one, probably the hardest question from my standpoint anyway. Dana, you mentioned, you quoted Jim Collins in your section, and one of my favorite quotes from his book is, confront the brutal facts, but never lose faith. And my question is, both of you have done a lot of change management. You're change agents, you're innovators extraordinaire. how do you maintain a generative attitude and enthusiasm when you hit those headwinds, when people are pushing back? Maybe people even like vilify you or say, why do I have to do this? You're impinging on my well-being. When you hit those headwinds, how do you maintain your grit and a positive attitude and not just throw in the towel?
Oh man. You know, I think I think it kind of comes back to the mission and reminding ourselves why we are doing this, which is to empower learners to be the best physicians that they can be. I think about my duty to, you know, graduate folks who are competent to take care of patients and what my societal responsibilities are. And then, you know, I think in this realm, as things change inevitably, the work is never done. So I think kind of accepting that we're never finished, we're ongoing, and like there's, you know, maybe beauty in that. To get a little meta, I guess.
Fremen, how do you stay positive? How do you find your grit?
Pardon, may you repeat your key question?
When things get really challenging or you're getting a lot of pushback, how do you stay positive and how do you keep moving things forward when it feels like you just want to stop?
It's really a good question. And if you really have a team, that is critical solution for this. You will grieve together and you will figure out what is the next together. And through this process, people need friendship to do anything. The friendship support each other, and also have I always believe in crowded wisdom. They will guiding us. And the other part is something more spiritual. I believe everyone in the team have their purpose to get meaning from what they are doing. So if you have a group of friends like this, they will help you to not only energize you in the change management, it help you to find out your own meaning through the process, then to support you is really sustainability. I will not say job, is a career. Thank you.
Amazing wisdom. What I heard from both of you just there is remember your mission, your guiding principles, your North Star, and then I love the idea of relationship, friendship, find your community to sustain you. And not to put too shameless of a plug, but one of the things that the ICBE Collaborative tries to do is provide that community for people, either through these webinars or through our CBE summits, or you know, any of the major education meetings that are out there. You'll find us, many of us walking around. So hopefully we can serve as part of a community, and obviously we've got our local communities and friends. What a great note to end on. I actually find that very inspiring and helpful. And so I just want to say thank you so much to Dr. Sall, Dr. Chou. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. And of course, if you want to rewatch this or you missed a part of it, or you have somebody you want to share this with, this will be recorded and posted in due time. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.